Well, without further ado, we're going to announce the next speaker, Archie Lee Coates.
Hello. Thanks for having me, and welcome to the third wave. All right, here we go. So in 2009, my friend Jeff and I started an extremely multidisciplinary creative office called PLAYLAB Incorporated, which now includes Dylan Kogel, Anna Cecilia Mota-Thompson, and Phil Gibson. We don't have any particular focus to our studio. We work in all scales. Every year looks different than the next. We sort of exist to make things that we haven't. We learn things that we're interested in, and ultimately we go on a really strange adventure that has no goal, and except to see what we see when we get there, which is something that we say quite often. We don't know where we're going as a studio, and we're good with that. But at the core of what we are as a studio, core being a pun that was intended, one thing that we hold extremely sacred that we think is not only just important for us, but everyone else too, is the concept of group mentality. PLAYLAB is a journey first and foremost in relationships. It's taken us 10 years to learn that. It's a team sport for us. Every project that defined PLAYLAB in our way of thinking traced back to a relationship that's somebody who introduced us or trusted us or made something with us. And to do that really well, group mentality, we need one other thing, something that a legendary hardcore band out of DC that started in 1977 called Bad Brains promoted really hard, which is called positive mental attitude, or PMA. This image particularly represents what I want it to feel like at the studio every hour of the day. And quite honestly, it really does feel that way. This is me and Jeff. These are two friends who unknowingly were wearing the same matching outfit at the age of 3, and idealistically decided to start a studio at the age of 19 by writing this business plan on a small napkin at a coffee shop in Blacksburg, Virginia. The cool thing is that there are hundreds and thousands of precedents of artists and designers that prove that we are not the only ones that think this way, ones that run in packs, that are connected by friendship, that support each other, whether they have successes or failures, and constantly move forward together, we being the key denominator. Two that really define that ideal for us is Charles and Ray Eames in the studio they built for themselves in California. One person that visited said they walked in to find toy trains, toy boats, wooden elephants, an aquarium. One room was a mock-up of a clown's dressing room, and others were seashells, wooden alphabet blocks, a sequin Indian doorway piece, and a model of the entrance of the new Washington Post building. Charles was famous for saying, "I don't believe in this concept of the gifted few, just in people doing things they are really interested in doing. They have a way of getting good at whatever that is." And then there's Experiments in Art and Technology, or EAT. That is an organization that was started in 1967 at Bell Labs to facilitate contact between artists and engineers. It was an incredibly punk effort. It was started without a blessing from Bell Labs. There was no sponsor. They worked on vacations and weekends. There was no formal process, and they initiated projects that expanded the role of the artist in contemporary society. And then there's contemporary examples like Brockhampton, which is a young American rap collective with half a dozen or more albums under their belt, like 13 members or something like that, and they are described as gay, black, white, DIY, ambitious. I cry a lot sometimes when I talk. All-inclusive and would-be pop stars. It's their diversity of members and talent that allows for their art to be so powerful. These, and our studio, thrives off of very thin to transparent boundaries. The one thing that we know is that our work, our trajectory, our future at PLAYLAB, it's not tied just to relationships, but the quality of relationships both inside and outside of the studio. The only evidence that we have of this is our work. This is a portrait taken by our friend Luca Ventor, Jeff in the front, and the four of us imposed onto the Mount Rushmore. The only evidence that we have of this is our work. I'm going to hit you with this real quick and try to get across 10 years in like 2 minutes. But it's because of Jeff, the support of our teams, and the trust of people that we've been able to start a pie shop in southern Alabama, create a poster for the composer Max Richter, launch LACMA's first iPhone app, create a brand for a fashion journal called Line, create a brand for a fabrication studio called Face Design here in Brooklyn, teach a course in Saudi Arabia and do a project with that and them in the city of Mecca, win a grant in Stockholm, Sweden, and stay there for 2 weeks making this weird-ass thing. Design an entire city block in the capital of Croatia, Zagreb. Design an identity system for middle school and high school in Berkeley, California. Design a mobile merch vehicle for Bruno Mars. Design a house for a family in upstate New York. Design a book that didn't get made for a designer named Virgil Abloh. Create a music video for our friend Alex. Create a music video for a punk band out of Detroit that broke up during the making of the video. Launch an incredibly empowering sex toy company called Dame Products. Do creative direction for a fashion brand called Need Supply with my friend Gabriel Richopo. Launch a weird-ass installation using like tons of relationships and friends at ADO's, the project space in Greenpoint. Help this like marijuana baking supply company skirt the rules of Kickstarter and Indiegogo to raise some money. Launch the digital archive of the painter Christopher Wool. Do a weird-ass installation using a vintage copy machine at the National Museum of Art in Bucharest, Romania. Do this weird wind machine in LA. Take $500,000 worth of lamps from First Dibs and create a sensor-based activation, pressure-based activation that turns them all on at the same time. Start a record label with our friends. We released 5 vinyl records and called it Sound Friends. Win a competition in 2011 to build a new type of street tents for the city of New York. Launch an architecture magazine that is now in issue 17. Start messing around with art, this one based off the fact that Joaquin Phoenix, his first name sounds like the word walking, and he has found walking in 17 of his films. So we compiled and collected all of those. Did a project called Stationary Paperboy at the Flag Art Foundation where we threw that day's New York Times at anybody that walked into the gallery. Launched a project called Grown Up Flowers where we designed and created 6 40-foot inflatable flowers that towered over people in Midtown Manhattan last year, and then this year recommissioned, and we did a project called Fantasy Landscapes that allowed people to be transported to other environments in Central and South Americas like this guy. And then we started designing shoes because why not? And that kind of took a whole world of its own, and then we got a museum show in Denver, Colorado. You can go see that until December 7th. Designed Drake's tour retail for his Scorpion album last summer. Brap. Some campaigns for Nike and Stranger Things Season 3. This campaign we just did a couple months ago with Kate Moss and a brand called Zadig and Voltaire where we pretended that like she actually showed up in Paris, Texas instead of Paris, France. Designed the monograph with a bunch of people with the artist and designer Virgil Abloh, which led to designing his 3rd collection for Louis Vuitton this past summer in June, where we got to design a custom bench and a bunch of cool ephemera and then like a giant bounce house with the Louis Vuitton monogram on it. Which brings me to this, which is arguably the best example of group mentality and positive mental attitude working, and I'm going to give it to you as fast as I can because I got 9 minutes and 19 seconds. It started with my friend Dong, and that's Jeff. Obviously, he's just older than it was in the photo where we're wearing the matching overalls. And our friend Juana Stanescu, we sat in this room, we started thinking about a bunch of things and started talking about the fact that the island of Manhattan is surrounded by water, but you can't swim in it. But you could in 1800s. All the way up into 1936, there was 14 floating bathhouses. So we designed this project called Plus Pool, I was 25 years old. The idea of this thing was an Olympic-sized floating pool that would filter the water to allow you to swim in clean East River water for the first time in 100 years. We had no idea how it would work. So we drew this diagram that's like a filter. And then we drew this diagram that shows, like, this is what people look like swimming in it. And then we made a zine and a poster, also a punk effort, and sent it out to a bunch of people. And then we heard back from Arup, one of the biggest and coolest engineering firms in the world. They proved that it was feasible over 6 months and gave us this giant binder, which we half understood. We used that to raise $41,000 on Kickstarter in 2011, which enabled us to do a real water quality test on the end of a pier where we could test the filtration system. That proved successful, so we started going around and doing all these meetings. This was at a lobbying firm in 2010. Which produced all of these letters of support from state senators and council members and the Parks and Recreation and all these people, which led us to doing another Kickstarter campaign where we raised $273,000 from 3,175 people, which enabled us to build a much bigger testing unit so that we could prove we could filter the East River with our engineering partners, because we don't really know how to do that. We got a bunch of cool data from it that showed us that it was absolutely possible, and then Google really liked that and built a water quality dashboard that allowed that to be visible to the public, and then we swam in clean East River water for the first time in 100 years. And then all these people started noticing, and then Vice did a little video on it, and then David Letterman did a monologue on it, and then Time Magazine called it the best invention of the year, which is all cool. And then we started going around the world and talking to mayors, this is in Munich, Germany, about how they should be swimming in their rivers. The Munich one's funny because their water is clean and they're not swimming in it, so that's LOL. And then the deputy director of Parks and Recreation gave me his maple leaf lapel pin and said, we're going to build this. And then we started a nonprofit, and after a year, we got our 501c3 status in 2015, hired Kara Meyer, who is the patron saint and the managing director of Plus Pool. And then we built a board of directors with the most incredible people in the world, and built a board and an organization from the ground up that exists to maintain, build, and operate Plus Pool in perpetuity. Kanye West came to our first gala. That was funny. Then Connor Dwyer, also at that gala, gave an incredible speech, talked about his gold medal, and talked about the opportunity that swimming actually provides for so many people. And that's when we realized that architecture was a lot more than a building, but it was about human beings, group mentality. We hired another person, Jancy Butterworth, started throwing bigger and larger parties thanks to support from beer brands like Heineken. Started doing art partnerships with Mike Perry and Curtis Kulig, Masaki Kawai in Japan. And then the incredible artist Cindy Sherman got on board, and we made a pool float of her iPhone with a cool image from her Instagram on it, and now it's in like almost every major museum in the world, and that funds Plus Pool. Then we built a swim program for kids between the ages of 7 and 11 in public housing, partnered with the New York City Housing Authority, that gets them in the water. It started once a year with 20 kids in one borough, now in several boroughs, hundreds of kids 2 times a year. Then we started throwing bigger parties to support all this stuff. And then Heineken helped do some campaigns for us and started spreading the message a little bit further and wider. And then they did a documentary with our friends Missing Pieces. And this is Joshua David from the Highline that is on our board, who's been also a patron saint of the project. Then we sent out a petition, had 10,000 people sign this pledge, say that they would swim in the river. We sent that to the mayor's office to say, what's up, like this should be happening. We need the support. Then we got a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts to build this thing that we also didn't know how to build, which is a light installation that says what the quality of the river is at that time in the shape of Plus Pool, kind of an advertisement, but also a beautiful art project. I started getting invited to City Hall a lot more. I have so many images of these, which is really amazing because, again, architecture turned into this sort of group mentality of friendship and getting together and just having conversations and pushing this thing up a hill. Then we started going to community board meetings. This is when Community Board 1 unanimously voted for Plus Pool to be placed in the East River Harbor. And then 2 weeks ago, the city of New York announced an RFI for exactly what we've been asking for 9 years, which is to build Plus Pool in the East River. And And then last night, after 2 years and $500,000 and tons of work and permitting and holdups, we launched PlusPool Lite, which is a light version of PlusPool, literally more puns, that tells you what the quality of the river is at that time, and you can go to water.pluspool.org and see in real time what the quality of the river is. And in 3 to 4 years, we will be swimming in the river together. Thank you. A couple days ago on a plane, I was watching this Yoko and John Lennon documentary and it blew me away, and it reminded me of this simple and idealistic line that continues to hit hard for me, which is, you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, and it's important to remember that. I'm going to leave you with a makeshift manifesto that I wrote with my team and pulling random shit off Twitter. The ingredients are straightforward: interest, excitement for the unknown, friendship and kindness, hard work, not in a privileged position, sculpting our own reality. Ain't no way they can categorize me. The very opposite of not open. It is not a job. Fuck the money. Never leave your people behind. Include the people around us. Power is an inside job, looking far, seeing every opinion, cherishing small wins, driven by what could be, a catalyst for the inevitable fusing of specializations, trying to get in that room, just not doing it like you. Always take the initiative, connect with them all, blindly go into the void. We share a community of vision. We're free to fail, starting new conversations without permission, the overwhelming potential. I got 2 minutes left, which is so good. Yeah, the only point here is that PLAYLAB might feel like a wave, and it always will to us, but it's not worth writing if everyone's not on it with us. Thank you so much.